Dan is a retired professor from Vanderbilt Divinity School in Nashville, Tennessee. A couple of things about that. He used to teach an ethics class in a prison in Tennessee. I just love that. So half the students were seminary students, half the students were residents of the prison. Incredible teaching that he has done and does. The other thing about Dan that I love is his simple lifestyle. He probably embodies better than anybody else I know a very simple lifestyle. He lives in one room of a house in community in Nashville. One purpose of the house is to give young activists a place to stay when they come to Nashville for one reason or another. Just cool stuff about Dan. Dan and I were also, along with Susan Mullen, whom some of you know, the three of us put together the Earth Keepers program for Global Ministries. So that was great fun. Dan and I have done good work together in terms of this creation care movement within the church. And we're both very connected to the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement, to which I hope all of you guys are connected at some point or another. So that's Dan. He's an amazing guy. He's a terrific Christian and a fantastic earth keeper, environmentalist kind of person. So Dan, take it away.
Thank you, Pat. It's a real honor to work with Pat and many others of you on this Zoom today. We're recording, of course, and so we'll send that recording to you. Please put in the chat your name and your annual conference so we know which annual conferences are here. And again, today's workshop is really just to introduce you to a framework of work that you can do at home, that you can do with the people in your conference at home. It's really looking at your cultural landscape within the conference and then how that relates to creation care. And I'm going to ask a series of questions, and then you'll go into breakout rooms and discuss those questions, and we'll have some time to share back, and we'll do that 3 times. So let me share my screen here. And so we're going to be looking at your cultural landscape within your annual conference. And to do this is look, locate, and listen. As a community organizer, we're always looking to see what's around us. We're always locating capacities and capabilities within the community. And most important, we're always listening to people within the community. And so the first question I'm going to ask you is, what is your natural landscape? What is your natural landscape within that your conference is situated within? And I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for a moment. Close your eyes and pretend that you're looking out into the landscape of that your conference is within, and also kind of imagine feeling. And so, with your eyes closed, what is the climate like? What is the physical climate like? Visualize that for a moment. Second, where are the waterways? Where is the water? Visualize that. Third, what is the vegetation like? The trees, all the vegetation, the natural vegetation. Fourth, what is the fauna or the wildlife like? Or what natural creatures do you share your community with? And finally, how has this natural landscape been shaped by humans? How has the natural landscape been shaped by humans? Visualize that for a moment. Okay, you can open your eyes. And so you just, again, if you were to do that, this is, this is a visualization exercise, but I would encourage you to go and look and listen and feel in your natural landscape within your conference, and take some real time to do that, and the others within your team. And the second question I'm going to ask, and this is one you may not have considered, and I've actually never not considered it a great deal until I started thinking about this workshop. And so you might not have an answer for this question yet, but it's one I encourage you to think about. How has your natural landscape shaped the cultural landscape of your conference? Think that through. How has your natural landscape shaped the cultural landscape of your conference? And I'm now going to break folks up into, take a moment and write these two questions down. What is your natural landscape? You're going to be discussing that in your breakout room. And write down the question, or remember the question, how has your natural landscape shaped the cultural landscape of your conference? Those are the two questions you'll be discussing in your breakout room. What is your natural landscape? And how has your natural landscape shaped the cultural landscape of your conference? Okay, well, we're going to rejoin, and we started the recording back. Welcome back, everybody. We'll spend a few minutes just talking about what you talked about, particularly how the landscape might have influenced the culture of your conference. And again, just anybody, this is going to be an open format. You can raise your hand or pop right in.
I think we kind of noticed that the ecological regions affect the people living in different types of communities that tend to be divided politically, and that also affects the way that we are in our conferences, that we're kind of segregated in society.
Okay, so right now the ecological landscape, at least how we're dealing with it, might not be the ecological landscape's fault, but the way we're dealing with it seems to divide us to some degree, and that's probably true, and it's no doubt true. Other thoughts?
We, in our group, building on what Rachel just said, we talked about how I'm in Virginia Beach and it's super conservative here. So sometimes when you talk about the environment or social action issues, it's perceived as political, not biblical. And just red flag, if I talk some things, not sustainability so much, but some of the things are like trigger words for people. So I have to be really careful. I can't just talk about social action because it's deemed too political.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Others?
Well, I was in a group with a couple of, this is Kate Quistron from Illinois, a couple of women from North Georgia and North Carolina, and they were both concerned about the development in their cities affecting the environment. And I think they kind of thought that when I said I was along the Mississippi River in central Illinois, that I wouldn't have that. But I shared that there is development along the river and flooding. And of course, we're affected by the same conservatism amongst farmers, and that's development of another kind, which affects all the rivers with the water runoff. And they are, I think, deeply skeptical of environmental regulation, mostly.
Okay, so there's a concern about environmental regulation amongst certain parts of our community. Others?
I live in Dallas in the North Texas Conference, but I'm not really familiar with the rest of the conference, just really Dallas County. But we are, on the one hand, extremely conservative. The people here are politically conservative, but becoming less so because we experience every weather disaster that can happen as a result of climate change, except sea level rise. All the rest we've been getting, and we've been dealing with those. And so we have not been dealing with them in the church, but the cities have been addressing them. And the city of Dallas has a climate action plan that they passed unanimously last year. And the suburbs are beginning to make their adjustments also.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks for sharing that.
Our landscape in North Carolina has been shaped primarily by slavery and by indigenous removal from the land. So what was is not now. And so for many of our tobacco farmers, cotton farmers, they have dead soil that needs chemicals in order to produce a crop. So that's what has shaped our landscape, is the abuse of humans, which led to the abuse of land, which now is abusing water as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Keith. Yeah, it's an important insight. Others?
My name is Sharon Mccormick, and I live in the suburb of Denver, Colorado. And our conference is composed of Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and parts of Utah. So there's a large geographical expanse. And I would say from Wyoming, coal fields, coal development, and prairie and mountains. And it kind of signifies to me and also gorgeous scenery and lots of beautiful things going on, but lots of people moving in and densely populated in places of suburbia. So it's very, very varied. And the mountains to me are a symbol of formidable barriers to a lot of things, and yet they're also the opportunity to overcome and climb to new heights with new ideas and thoughts about how to be caring for the creation. So I see that landscape as a barrier and an opportunity at the same time.
Thank you, Sharon. That's insightful. Others?
Yeah, I'd just like to piggyback on what Keith said. Keith and I are both a part of the North Carolina Conference Creation Care Ministry team. Because of what Keith said, because the landscape has been negatively impacted by the culture of agriculture in a very negative way, Keith and a colleague of his have developed a regenerative agriculture toolkit hopefully for use by farmers in Eastern North Carolina to try to undo some of that. So it's and our Creation Care Ministry team has embraced that toolkit and will help to try to get it out there. So it's the landscape has been affected by the culture of agriculture in Eastern North Carolina, and that has informed a major agenda item of the North Carolina Conference annual conference Creation Care Ministry team. So I said in the breakout group, Dan, that Keith is a great illustration of what you're trying to do with this today, because he knows that very, very well. It's very cool.
Thanks, Pat.
Culturally, in Southwest Missouri, I feel like we are still very much in denial of climate change and its effects and what to do about it.
Thank you, Cheryl. You're not Cheryl, but I'm reading your name down there. What is your name?
Janice?
Janice, yeah.
So Jake was in our group. He's from Indiana. Jake, if you're still on, I'd love to have you share with the whole group about how you see the agricultural culture extend into fellowship lunches and stuff.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm eating. I think our greatest frustration, my wife and I are both clergy. We're both kind of Wendellberry people. And our greatest frustration has actually not been with creation care, but with the way our congregations do food and fellowship, that our eating practices, what we eat, how we get it, how we come together over it, are just as dysfunctional as the farming practices and the cultural integrity around us. So we came from a church where there was an annual chicken noodle dinner, and we came to a church, where it's an annual baked steak dinner. Both are served on mashed potatoes with a dinner roll, every bit of it from Gordon Food Service. And I just think there's so much actual community-based agriculture in these areas that there's just no vision to connect to. And I know that food it can be such a catalyst, not only for community, but also for awareness of our connectedness to God's creation. And if the food culture is bad, I don't see how anything else can be good.
Thank you, Jay. Food is central to all of this. It's central to our fellowship, and it's central to how we care for the land. One or two other comments before we move along.
Yes, I want to bring up a reminder to those that we were talking about agriculture is the movie Kiss the Ground. Mm-hmm. It's a powerful look at regenerative agriculture and different ways that folks have connected over that. I think that's a very useful tool to know about if you don't know about it. Yeah. And I also want to mention that I was struck several years ago. We were riding the Katy Trail in Missouri. It's a bike trail, and it goes through a lot of farmland. And we were struck by how there was nothing in that monoculture except those cornfields. There were no birds, there were no insects. It was devoid of life, and it was so scary to see that. I had not seen that up close.
Lynn,
I want to make a comment. Hello?
Go ahead.
I'm on the phone so no one can see me. My name is Trina.
Welcome.
Hello.
Mm-hmm, we hear you.
Thank you. Trina Robinson. Yeah, I'm from the Florida conference. And I'd like to piggyback on the part with the food. Right here in Florida where I live, in Miami where I live, we had, once upon a time, we had plenty of farms, where they grow all different types of food and trees. But now that is being taken away and they're building homes, apartments or businesses. And it's sad because now there's no parks are being built. All the green is being taken away. So basically all you're seeing is wall-to-wall cement. And also I've noticed as well that we used to have a lot of birds and a lot of bees and lots of butterflies and stuff. You don't see that anymore. You're lucky if you see 10 birds in one day. And it's sad that we're so busy destroying, the environment like that.
Thank you for sharing that. That's important insights there. We're going to need to move on to our next section here. And again, I'm sure there's a lot of other thoughts out there that you could share and continue to think that through. But we'll need to move on to our next portion of this. And I'm going to share my screen here again. The second set of questions, and we're going to do breakout rooms again. And this is starting, we see that there's a lot wrong, and there's a lot dysfunctional, and there's a lot of harm going on, and we've named that, and we don't want to sugarcoat that. We want to deal with that. At the same time, we live in a very critical culture right now. I think where that we take particular positions, and if we don't share the same position, we're immediately looking at that person as somehow an enemy. I'm not talking about the people in this room, but that seems to be our tendency. So I want to also start with kind of appreciative inquiry, and also looking at kind of our better angels, and starting with the better angels. And so 2 questions here. How is the wider creation cared for in your conference? Where do you see signs of where the wider creation is cared for in your conference? And second, what inspires people to care for the wider creation in your conference? What in the tradition resonates with people? So if you're going to get people to act, and if we want to get people to join in, we want to both see where it's going on already and tap into that and learn from that, but also what inspires people and what in our tradition resonates with people to motivate them to extend themselves to care for creation. So I'll write these 2 questions down here. See, somebody, JD, just entered the waiting room. And I'll put these in the chat. And then welcome back, everybody. And when people don't rush back, that means they're talking, which is a good thing. So I think the open discussion worked well last time. So let's just continue on with that format. And the 2 questions is, how is the wider creation cared for in your conference? And what inspires people to care for the wider creation in your conference? And what in the tradition resonates with people in this respect? So I'll just open it up.
Okay. We talked a little bit about, I'm in Mountain Sky. And so we have the plains and the rural and the oil fields and the mountains and the skiing. And so recreation is a huge motivator because people are understanding the snow is going away, the fishing is getting diminished, the hunting is impacted. So that whole recreational nature is part of our recreational lifestyle. So I think that is a motivator. And I think the other thing that we talked about that I think is happening now, 2 years ago, we were not talking about it. Now people are willing to hear about it because of the disasters that we're experiencing. And the uniting thing with the rural and the urban is a huge thing here in this big, gigantic conference, that I think a uniting element will be if the city people will wake up to the water use. Because what we see all the time are these bluegrass lawns and these developments, and the aquifers are going down, and the rural people are going, hey, they're taking my water. Don't they know they need food? So I feel like that's a healing element if we can turn the urban people to see the bigger picture. So that's kind of what we talked about, or what I talked about. So,
yeah. All right, thanks, Mary Beth. Yeah, thanks a lot there. Others?
We talked about for things to be wider in terms of creation care, the importance of partnerships, whether they be with Interfaith Power and Light, with the Sierra Club, with local organizations, that those are extremely important to cast that wide net for creation care.
All right, thank you, Phyllis. Mike, looks like you're raising your hand.
Sure. In Baltimore, Washington here, that we're in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. The Potomac River flows in, one of our major rivers flows into the Chesapeake Bay. Everybody in our area cares about the Chesapeake Bay. We care about the fish. We care about the crabs, which are world famous in our area. So the whole watershed, people care about the watershed in that sense. And so people get the connection about planting trees that protects the watershed. We're trying to get them to understand lawn care as a protection to the watershed. And we had a webinar recently on saving the earth one lawn at a time, a natural way. You're never going to eliminate turf entirely, but there are good ways to do it.
Thanks, Mike. Jenny, looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to lift up for those who haven't seen it yet. Sometimes it feels really important to have support from conference leadership and bishops. I don't think that's the only way to make things happen, but in some cases, it can be a real boost. And the Council of Bishops agreed last week. They agreed on 5 things, including encouraging and supporting conferences on climate action. They're going to revisit their 2009 statement on the environment, a number of different things. So I just want to lift that up so that as you think more about engaging on a conference level, you can remind your bishop that this commitment was made and ask them to live into it.
Thank you, Jenny. That's an important suggestion. Others?
Could I introduce Chris, because I feel a cough coming on and she can explain it better what we did in our breakout session.
Sure.
But listening was number one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know quite what to say. I talked about that gardening is a way that a lot of the churches that I'm familiar with have connected to creation care. And that would be the way that I would like to expand that in the church that I go to. We've got a gardening group. We tried doing a green team through Church and Society, and Church and Society was trying to do like 40 different things, so we didn't get anywhere. But I thought the people with the church garden would be interested in this. We've got people all over our city who are involved with urban gardens, and it is an important factor in environmental justice, food justice in many parts of our city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the gardens are, yes, they are a very vital way of doing that. And it connects again with food and food injustice and all of those types of things. And so it's also a very hands-on way for people to take it on. Beth, you had your hand up?
I did. I wanted to say, first of all, thank you, Mike, and everybody in the Baltimore Washington conference who are doing that kind of things, because we live on the Chesapeake Bay, right? We are downstream from everybody. And so that was as the recipient of what flows downhill, so to speak, it's appreciated. And I was saying, in our group, I have not heard anything come down from our conference that deals with creation care at all. We have a lot of naysayers on the peninsula, so it's a sad thing. It's a hard thing, and then you have somebody like me who's kind of Jenny will tell you, I'm kind of a flake, and it's far too much enthusiasm for this, far too much of a passion for this. So yeah, we are because we are between the Chesapeake Bay, the nation's largest estuary, and the Atlantic Ocean. We are prone to climate change. We are, if you look at the models, by 2050, there will be maybe a strip of land going down our peninsula, but we still have a lot of people who just don't believe it's real. And a lot of the agriculture, we have 20% of the world's chickens are produced on our peninsula. And so the local coastal bays things took a lot of the local farmers to court because of the phosphorus and the nitrogen that was ending up in the waterways. And so now most of the agricultural people are just defensive. And I work in a church. I'm a pastor of a church that's very rural, and we have a lot of farmers, and it's very, don't talk to me about that stuff. And a lot of people have gone out of the farming business here because the added, I'd love to have our conference step up and go, you know what, you all are required to plant, to do plantings between your chicken houses and the waters. And here, our conference is going to do this major tree planting for you, just to partner with our agriculture. I think would be beautiful. And now I'm going to stop talking so somebody else can.
So I'm going to jump in here. One of the things that we talked about was what we're doing in the Tennessee conference. And that is that we realized we were in this urban-rural divide. And so we decided to pull together people from each of the 5 districts and into a listening conversation kind of atmosphere. So we have a conference resolution, which Paul Slintz wrote, and it got passed in our conference. So our conference people are saying, oh, okay, maybe I'm supposed to do something about this. And we have on our conference team a gentleman who came up with the idea of making this a listening thing. And the way to do that was what he calls ministry touch. So we have the names of the pastors in the local churches, and we call them to invite them to come to the district event. And our focus is on getting people together and listening to hear what they're doing, what they're concerned about, what their hopes are, what their worries are. And in that time, we spend some good quality time sharing also from the local university, the local Wesley Foundation, because there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm and a captive audience in of younger folks who are concerned and doing things. So it's a time that becomes inspirational and feels supportive. And our goal is that those groups that we initiate and brought together once will come together more often, and that would be an opportunity for them to see that they're not alone and that they are supported and that there are good things happening.
Yep. Thank you, Chris. Well, have just time for one more comment. I see Rachel, your hand is raised.
All right. Thank you. We had discussion about difficulty with changing the status quo, difficulty with the decisions being made by the finance committee, which is completely divorced from the green teams, and also Reverend Phillips mentioned that people just are too disconnected from nature, and you can't care about what you're not connected with. But one thing our conference has done for our bishop has written many books. His name's Robert Schnase, and I don't know, maybe 15 books at least I've seen on christianbook.com, and one of them was Just Say Yes. And if we actually followed what he said in that book, I think that alone would make a difference, because he basically said if a member of your congregation comes up and they have a and they have an idea, the only reason you should tell them not to do the idea is if they can't get the resources, and then you have to ask, could you help them get the resources? And is it not within the mission of the church? But if it's within the mission of the church and they have a way to do it, you should just let them do it. And I think that would actually, even if we achieve that, we'd make a lot of progress in creation care instead of just kind of keeping with the status quo or doing whatever's cheap. And I do think also Methodists resonate with social justice, and when you address it from that viewpoint, most people do at least academically agree. From the academic viewpoint, it's when you get into the personal action and the corporate action that can really be a challenge.
Yeah. Well, we've got major challenges, and thanks for sharing that idea about getting to yes or just say yes. Couple of thoughts before we move along. Yeah, Pat, obviously last week, many of you were on that and talked about the importance of Scripture, and that using Scripture as an entry into all of this. The other thing is if people's livelihoods feel threatened, farming right now is extremely difficult to make that work. And if people's livelihoods feel threatened, they're not often open to suggestions unless it helps their livelihood. Yeah, and farming, for instance, it's just a very difficult way to make a go of it today. And so, making it easier for people to make a livelihood and finding ways to do that within their calling or their vocation, I think is extremely important to do that. And so that's where the listening comes in too, because often those types of things will come up with the listening, and you'll see why there might be some resistance there. And there might be a very good reason for some kinds of resistance, but others may be just the challenges of the economics of it all. And so listening through all that. Going to do our final sharing here of our final set of questions here. Talking about the capabilities and the culture. Capability equals ability. People have abilities plus capacity, time, and resources. We often think if somebody isn't doing something, they don't have the ability to do that, but perhaps they just don't have the time and the resources, and then we'll try to find ways to make the time and resources available if possible. And so the next three questions are, where is the evident capability to care for the wider creation in your conference? Where is it evident, but also where might be it hidden from your sight? We often have our own cultural blind spots, so we might not see that capability. I'll give an example there. I mean, we often think of this type of stuff in really expensive ways, putting up solar panels and such, but I did a tabling event some years ago at Paul Slentz's church, and I came up with, it was a very low-income church, and I came up with 50 low-cost ways to care for creation, and also just suggested that low-income people are often doing many of those things already, and so recognizing that. And so where is the evident capability to care for the wider creation in your conference, but also where might be hidden from your sight? Second, and this gets to the whole diversity question, what different cultural communities do you have in your conference? And mapping that out. And three, what institutional structures in your conference might enable creation, justice, or care to flourish? And so let me get those in the chat. Okay, we're going to, there's the three questions. And stop there. And one more set of breakout rooms around those three questions. So we won't have time to do a report back here. This workshop probably should be a couple-hour workshop. We're moving through it pretty quickly, but we are trying to keep these workshops to an hour and a half to respect people's time. But to do it in person, it'd probably be a 2-hour workshop. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. And the final part of this, and again, this process is not a process that we just go through once. And I will send out I'll send out this framework plus the recording to everybody, plus some of the resources being shared out in the chat to folks, all of you on this call. But again, these questions that we're asking here are not questions that we just ask once. If you're going to be working with a conference, you want to keep asking these questions over and over, because it's going to continue to open out things. But the final piece of this is locating. You want to start mapping out your conference. Locate. What are some of the natural formations? What's the natural landscape look like in your conference, and what are some of the different pieces of that across the conference? You might have mountains. In other areas, there might be farms, forest areas, and so on. So locate that. Where are the different cultural communities within your conference, and kind of map that out. And then where are the congregations that have evident capabilities, the ones you want to start with, the ones that really seem to have that capacity and the capability to take this on immediately. Again, I believe with all of this that everybody has something to offer. And if we look at it, that everybody has something to offer. But you also want to kind of probably start with those that seem to have the capabilities or the interest right now or the capacity. And where are the civic organizations? People mentioned earlier some different organizations you can join with. Most conferences will have civic organizations that are devoted to this, the care of creation in one way or another. So where are those and locate those? And finally, where are the people in your conference that have capabilities and wisdom on creation care? And these are the people that then you want to go listen to. Who do we need to talk with as we begin to proceed? And so again, it's just a matter of, again, this is not a complex process. I mean, one can just kind of think out, you can get very sophisticated with all of this, but in reality, it's a simple mapping out. Where are the various natural formations in your conference? And how does that look like? Where are the different cultural communities? Where are some of the congregations that you would just identify that have these capabilities, the civic organizations with capabilities? And finally, people with evident capabilities and wisdom on this, and then go out and talk to them. List those folks out. Who do we need to talk to as we begin to proceed? And so again, it's really a process, and it's this could be a lifelong process. But again, when you're starting out, you just kind of want to look at all of this and continue to ask these questions. And if you continue to ask these questions and think through these questions, you'll have a much richer understanding of the culture and the landscape in your conference. A couple of folks have raised their hand. We've only got a couple minutes, and I've actually need to rush to a dentist appointment right after this ends. But I think Rachel and Chris, you had a couple questions.
I think I will ask, instead of which congregations have capabilities, what capabilities each congregation has, so that to challenge myself to recognize that.
Okay, yeah, that's another way of putting that. And again, everybody has something to offer. And yeah, what capabilities the congregations have. So again, you probably want to identify the ones that are most evident first, but also asking what capabilities do all congregations have. And I think that's a good way of putting that. So that's in a nutshell about how we map out our cultural landscape and our natural landscape, and so we can approach this as people that are listening to folks, recognizing capabilities, and trying to catalyze those possibilities within our conference. Our next workshop, we'll be looking at what is our vision and mission in the conference? How do we start, what is our mission and vision for creation care within the conference? So our next of this series of workshops, we'll be looking at that. We don't have a date yet set for that, but we'll certainly let you know as soon as we have that. And so again, really appreciate all the great insight that people have shared. A lot of great insight today, and we really want to do these as participatory workshops, so we share each other's wisdom. It's not a top-down training, but it's a really sharing process. And so we shared a lot of insight with each other today. And again, just encourage you to continue to work with us in terms of mapping out. And again, our next workshop will be coming up soon on looking at our mission and our vision. So again, thank you all for joining us, and I'm sure that your work will go well in your conferences as you either start a creation care team in your conference or continue to develop a creation care team in your conference. So thank you all again for joining in.
Thank you for making it available.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dan.